Shir. Okay, Erev Tov, everybody. Nice to have you again. Welcome back to the class on Tefilla. What I want to do is start off with a brief topic that I did not talk about yet, that I wanted to talk about at the beginning. It's very brief, and whether you're a guy and you put on a talit or you don't, this is also a really good introduction to your day. Let me show you something interesting. In the Shulchan Aruch, it tells us that when a man puts on his talit in the morning, that he's supposed to wrap it what's called atifat yishmaeli. The way a Yishmael would wrap, or an Ishmaelite would wrap his talit. So when you put it on, I don't have mine with me right now. It basically means you put it over your head, you don't cover your face, and when you put it over your shoulders, your face is shown. Okay, very nice. Of all the ways the Shulchan Aruch could have described how to put on the talit in the morning, why mention Ishmael? Of all people that we know to this day we suffer because of Ishmael. So a reason I saw quite a while ago, I thought was very, very nice little twist, and it really helps us to understand the day when we begin our tefillah for everybody. What was happening with Ishmael? We're going to talk about this again in a minute. Ishmael is going to come up again in a minute at one of the brachot. He was dying. You know that his mother Hagar had taken him out, and they ran out of water, and he was dying. And the Hashem said that he is going. He says that the child was crying, and says that Hashem saw him basher hu sham, as he was there. What does that mean? So Malachim in the heavens are saying, "Wait a minute, why don't you just let him die? Because we know in the future there's going to be all kinds of problems because of Ishmael." Hashem says no. Basher hu sham, how he is right at this very moment, that's how he's going to be judged, and not his future. I think that's a good hint to us at the beginning of davening. It's going to fit in when we come to Mizmor Shir Chanukah, hopefully still tonight. You sometimes might come to Tefillah, like, again, who am I to daven? I'm not such a good person. I don't know what I'm davening. I did this wrong. I did that wrong. You come in, whether you go to shul or you're davening at home, Hashem starts our day by saying, I judge you, Basher hu sham. You've come to my house. You've come to open a siddur. You want to daven? Let's talk. So I think it's a very important psychological way to begin our day. So let's take a look at some of these brachot. We started last week. We got up through Malbish Aramim. I'm not doing all of them, just a few of them, and some of the basic meaning, and then some of the deeper meaning behind the words. The first one is Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam Pokeach Ivrim. We thank Hashem for being the one who opens the eyes of the blind. Now, I did a little check, and the amount of people on Earth, you may know this, there are 8 billion people on Earth. We just crossed that threshold a few months ago. Out of those 8 billion, approximately 0.5% are blind. So to thank Hashem for giving the blind the ability to see cannot be the only meaning of this bracha, because it doesn't make sense that we would have such a sweeping bracha for such a very small percentage of people. And not everyone who's blind, unfortunately, is able to end up seeing. Okay. So there is a literal meaning to the bracha, and now we're going to talk more about the metaphorical. In one way or another, every one of us is blind to something. It could be that someone we think is a good person is not. It could be that a deal we're trying to make in business we think is good, and it's not. We might think that some restaurant is kosher, and it's not really. That which we are unaware of, we are blind, it quotes, we are blind to that issue. And then we're asking Hashem and thanking Hashem that when we finally, the light bulb goes on and we realize that person is toxic, I don't need to be with that person. Or that situation is not what I thought it was. Or that job is not really what I meant to be at. Hashem is also Pokeach Ivrim. And there's another aspect to this. We just mentioned Yishmael. We know what happened when Yishmael was dying. It says that he cried. We just mentioned that. And then Hashem opens the eyes of his mother Hagar, and then she sees a well, and she goes and gets water from there. So some of you are familiar with this. Let me make this a little smaller. There is a concept of something called a skula. What's a skula? An action, a tefillah, something that one might do that is supposed to be auspicious to help us do something else. When a person loses an object, during that time, that object might be right near them. It may be 20 kilometers away, or it might be right in front of them, and they can't even necessarily see it. So there's a concept that's brought already in Midrash Rabbah in Sefer Breshit. It says as follows: Amar Rabbi Binyamin said, "Hakol becheskat sumim." Everyone is considered blind about something they may be searching for, something they may want to do, but they don't know how. Ad shakadosh baruch hu meir et einehem, until Hashem opens their eyes. How do we know that? Min hacha. We know it from here, from the following pasuk. It says, "Vayifkach Elokim et eineha." Hashem opened her eyes, meaning Hagar. Batelech v'temaleh tachem, and she went and she filled the jug. What does that mean? There was right in front of her a well, but she was so caught up in the sadness of what was happening with her son, she didn't even see that there was a well. And Hashem opened her eyes. She was considered Ivrim. She was considered blind to something that was right in front of her. And I think, and then part of that skula is also to ask the God of Rabbi Meir to answer us, and you donate money to Rabbi Meir Baal HaNes. I know people who've done this, and they have absolutely found things that they have lost. It's an amazing, it's not going to hurt. If you lose something, you want to find it, this may be the way to do it. I'm not talking about you leave your glasses on your head and say, where are my glasses? I've done that too. So that's Pokeach Ivrim. It also could be halacha. When you learn halacha of how to wash your hands in the morning, when you learn how to daven, when you learn how to do something on Shabbat, until you've learned it, you're quote unquote blind, you're unaware. In this case, we're going to use the word unaware of that. And with Hashem's help, you become aware of that. Talking about Matir Asurim from literally means he is one who releases those who are bound, who are in prison. Okay, again, with very few exceptions, most of the people hearing my voice right now will never have been tied up in chains and against their will not have been held in prison. But everybody has something that weighs them down. It could be an addiction. It could be a mental health issue. It could be, you name it, and fill in the blank. There's something that keeps us from moving forward. And when we're able to break free, when we're able to find the help we need, when we're able to get out of that situation, that is the Matira Asurim. And we refer to that also, by the way, we kept to a long time from now, at the beginning of Shemona Esrei, which they have the same words in Matira Asurim. We'll see. Next bracha. I kind of just check off a few of these as we go through them, because I wanted to get through at least these brachot tonight. Rokaha Haaretz Al Hamayim is what seems to be on the surface a very strange bracha. We're thanking Hashem for basically keeping the water where the water is and the dry land where the dry land is. I mean, wait a second, just look at the Sefer Breshit. In the beginning of Breshit, Hashem says, Yikavu hamayim, that the waters combine together, and they should be the waters here and the dry land here. So what exactly are we thanking Hashem for? So on the one hand, again, simple meaning, that when you get out of bed in the morning, you know, unless God forbid there's a flood in your house, you know you're getting up onto dry land. When you walk out of your house, you know you're going to step onto the dry land. You're not going to be stepping into the Mediterranean or the Atlantic or the Pacific or the Indian Ocean, depending where you are. So again, on the very straight, simplistic way, that's what this bracha means, that we are thanking Hashem for this. But let's take it a step further. Imagine you could not be guaranteed every day by day where the water would be. The Mediterranean is here one day, the next day it's 10 kilometers this way, one day it's 15 kilometers, and it's gamish, it's very flexible. Well, you can't live like that. Hashem gave us kadur haaretz, he gave us earth to live on, to prosper on, and to serve Hashem. If we're concerned about, are we going to be waking up in the middle of the ocean, we're not going to be able to serve Hashem properly. I'll tell you something that's, I think, pretty cool. I'll show you. Some of you who are into science may have heard of this before. This is something called Pangea. I'm going to make this bigger. There is a theory, and by the way, this completely can fit with Torah. completely. There's a theory that if you've ever looked at the map of the world, you will notice that it almost looks like a jigsaw puzzle, and that the shape of one continent would fit into the shape of the next continent. Here you have, for example, the United States. Here you have North Africa. Here you have Brazil. Here you have all these countries, according to the theory that Pangea was, that the Earth was one giant landmass and then was broken apart into what we see today. Works perfectly, by the way, with Yikavu Hamayim. Hashem decided where the waters were going to be after he made the dry land, where the dry land was going to be, and where the wetland was going to be. One of the proofs they have that Pangea is actually very likely the way the world was at one point, that all the landmass was together, is they have found in certain parts of the world fossils of animals that never lived at that part of the world. And the only way they could have gotten there is on land. So therefore, they would have been the idea that the lands were connected. So again, it's thanking Hashem that we can wake up and know that we can get our day started without having to think that we're going to walk out of our house and just fall into a puddle of water, into an ocean. Go back to the brachot. Next. Sha'asa li kol tzorki. Now, I want to point out something to you. You'll notice how I pronounce that word. I didn't say sha'asa. It's sha'asa. We will have a class one day down the road that will discuss Hebrew, how to pronounce the words properly, the difference between what's called mil el and mil ra, where the accents on the first syllable, that last syllable, shvana, shvanach, different things that you may have never learned or learned in school and said, who needs that? But I will just tell you without the reason now, when you say this word, it's she'asa li kol tzorki. You normally would say asa, hu asa et zeh. But in this particular case, for various grammar reasons, it's she'asa li kol tzorki. And what does it mean? It means we're saying Hashem, we're giving thanks to Hashem for the Hashem who did for us everything I need. He did every one of my tzarachim. Everything I need, I have. Really? Is that true? There are things I think I need. There are things I imagine you feel you need. So why do we say this? You're familiar with the statement in Pirkei Avot. Ezehu Ashir Hasamech Bechalko. Who is considered rich? Someone who is happy with what he has. Yes, there are things that I know I want. There are things that you know you want. But at the same time, for whatever reason, Hashem says, you're not getting that now. That's not on the agenda. I'm sorry. Today, it may be tomorrow, maybe in a year from now, may never be. But right now, today, you have what you need. So this bracha is not just, oh, I'm happy with what I have. It's a statement of emunah. It's a statement of faith and belief in Hashem that I accept that what I have as of right now is exactly what I'm supposed to have. Which is why, I'm not going to get into it tonight, the idea of the 10th of the Aseret HaDibrot, the 10 Commandments, which is lo tachmod, which doesn't mean don't be jealous, which means you shouldn't covet, shouldn't try to get something that's not yours, that belongs to somebody else, is in a sense saying the exact opposite of this bracha. It's saying that person has it, it should be mine. And therefore, that's a lack of emunah. It's showing I don't believe God gave me what I'm supposed to have. So this bracha is a bracha of emunah, as is the next one. Take a look at the next one. I'm going to loosely translate that as the one who enables the steps of the person. Okay, so what does this really mean? Okay, so we've seen some of our senses that we thank Hashem for. Our vision. You talked about knowledge, right? The very first bracha, where we can make distinctions with our knowledge, with our da'at. Then we're talking about matir asurim, our freedom of movement. And now, the ability to move forward, to go and progress in life. But what does it really mean? What is this idea of this bracha that we're really saying? There is a mitzvah in the Torah that says, Vehalachta bidrachai. We're supposed to walk in the ways of Hashem. What does that mean? So the Gemara gives us a few examples, which is called Mahu Afata, just like he is, so are you. Just like he is merciful, so you should be merciful. Just like Hashem visits the sick, you should visit the sick. Just like Hashem clothes the ones who need clothing, you should help clothe those who need clothing. So Hamichin Tzaddik is not just a matter of my being able to walk around and to leave my house and go to shul and go to work. It's a matter of he enables me to walk in his ways in this world and to do what's called in Latin imitatio Dei, which means to imitate God, to be the concept of Mahu Avata. But just a second, doesn't that sort of go against our concept of what's called Bechira Chofshit? Let me just move down. Okay, Bechira Chofshit. We're on this bracha right now still. Bechira Chofshit, remember, means free will. So what's God's hand? What's God's involvement in how I carry out my day-to-day? That seems to be it's my free will. If I want to go to work, to school tomorrow, and God forbid I want to walk into the office and start screaming at somebody and push a kid, God forbid, and get arrested for it, that's my free will. I can do that. It's not the right thing. It's terrible, obviously, but I have that ability. It's Bechira Chofshit. So the Gemara tells us the following statement. The path down which you want to go, they take you. What does that mean? Loosely, the loose translation explanation means as follows. When you decide, you use your Bechira Chofshit to do something and to go down a path that's not the best way, Hashem says, go ahead, I'm going to give you enough rope to hang yourself with. Go ahead, I'm not going to stop you unless it goes against God's master plan. You're going to do it. For the good or for the bad, you're going to do it. God's going to help you go along that path. On the other hand, if you decide you're going to do the right thing in life, Hashem's going to help you that way as well. The Maharsha asks the question, what does it mean, molichino? They take him down. It should say molichoto. Hashem takes you down the path. So he tells us that the malachim, the angels that we get on Friday night, that we welcome with Shalom Aleichem, those are the angels that help us, take us by the arm, so to speak, take us down the path we have chosen. So this bracha here, Sha'asali Kol Tzarki, is a bracha about emunah. This bracha here is about our belief and acceptance of Bechira Chofshit. The next bracha also tells us something interesting. Ozer Yisrael B'Gvura. He crowns us with, not crowns us, sorry, he wraps us with strength. What's it referring to? If you look at an English translation, you see he wraps us in strength. He wraps the Jewish people in strength. It doesn't seem like, it sounds like, okay, he gave gevurah, he gave power and might to the Jewish people. But what does it really refer to? It actually refers to the belt that a person wears around their body. It is the source for one of the reasons you'll find among Hasidim that they will wear a gartel, this little black material that they wrap around themselves. Some it's black, some it's white, some it's multicolored. It doesn't make a difference what it is. What's its purpose? What's the purpose of the belt? What's the purpose of having something wrapped around you? And what that have to do with gevurah? What's it have to do with a sense of power and might? What does the belt do? Where is it located? It's located at the middle of the body. If you never noticed, the upper part of your body and the lower part of your body have different functions. The upper part of the body, let's go with the lower part of the body. That's where you end up needing to make the bracha sheyatzar. It's the human physical, it represents the physicality of the human being. The upper part of the body is how we serve Hashem. Our hands, our mouths, our eyes, our nose, our ears, our brain, all that is on the top half of our body. So what we're doing is we're saying in this bracha, what is our gevurah? What is our strength, our might, our power? That whereas we have two parts of our body, and we're making a delineation with that belt, we have the two parts of our body, a physical and one that can be spiritual. Nevertheless, it's all part of how we serve Hashem. It's still all there that Hashem relates to us as human beings, as the physical human being, and the neshama aspect of us as well, which is the spiritual aspect of our being. You would think this bracha is self-explanatory. It says, Hanoten Laya'ef Koach is the one who gives us strength, or he gives the tired strength. And it makes perfect sense to make the bracha in the morning. I don't know, I can make that yawning when I'm saying it, but you could say that bracha almost any time of day would see, but most likely in the morning. Everyone has a different body rhythm. I can tell you that usually from 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock in the afternoon is a low point for me. It's a difficult time of day for me as far as tiredness. Everyone has the night people and people, morning people. I was never never was a night person. I'm an early riser. I can get up early. You tell me be somewhere at 4:30, no problem. I'm still tired, as I'm sure most people are when they wake up in the morning. And the older you get, the sleep may not be as good. When you wake up in the morning, you're tired. So the fact that you're able to get up and all is, Hashem is the one who gives the tired person strength. Fine, that's what it means, but there's another meaning. I'm going to read a pasuk to you. I didn't put it on the screen. I just have it in my notes. Pasuk in Yeshayahu says as follows, and this is the basis of this bracha. Noten laya'ef koach, God gives the tired strength. Ule'en onim, and the one who doesn't have any more abilities, any strength, otzma yarabeh, he will increase his power. It's a multiple meaning or multiple words. How do you say in Milan Defet? Synonyms, a lot of synonyms in here. The idea of both tiredness and strength mixed in. So that's at least that's the source of the pasuk. But what's the pasuk talking about? So the Targum over there, the Aramaic translation, and the Radak tell us that this pasuk is talking about a very specific tiredness. It's not the physical tiredness. It's a spiritual tiredness from being exhausted in the book of Yeshayahu, from galut, from exile. It indicates, I'm going to read you what I wrote down. It indicates that even if Mashiach has not yet arrived and we're still in galut, we thank Hashem for the ability to tolerate that galut, to tolerate that long, drawn-out exile as a nation as we wait for Mashiach. Meaning, this bracha is also a form of emunah. It's the emunah, at least on a deeper level, that we have this. Look, most of the people on tonight live here in Israel. Many people listen to this later, live in Israel, but not everybody. And even though we live in Israel, we still have to be very well aware of the fact that we have still millions of fellow Jews that live in Chutz La'aretz, in the diaspora. And our galut is the fact that we still don't have the Beit HaMikdash. It's going to be there tomorrow. Bezrat Hashem, it's going to be there tomorrow. But right now, Ba'asher Husham, as we sit right now, we don't have the Beit HaMikdash. That's a massive gaping hole in our Jewish lives. And we have to recognize that. But what gives us the strength to go on and still feel Ani Ma'amin, I still believe that the Mashiach will come and that the Beit HaMikdash will be built. So Hashem infuses us with koach, infuses us with strength to get beyond that. Imagine for a moment a person is in jail and they have been given a sentence of 50 years in jail. And the only possible chance they can get for parole is after 30 years, and that's with good behavior. That time in that jail is endless. It would very often you'll find people who have very severe psychological problems going into jail, but much more so after they've been in for many years. Some who use that time to fix themselves and to repair their lives. But it's seeming like there's no end. There's no end. So how do they get the strength to get up and go to the library if they have the ability to do so in the jail to learn and to study and to get it, whatever it might be? It's the same idea. The galut that they're in, the exile that they're in, and the exile that we're in without the Beit HaMikdash, Hashem gives us that strength. So again, we have another concept that now we're going to go back to another concept having to do with how Hashem is our partner. In the bracha afterwards, we say Hanoten Le'av Koach. Then we say a little paragraph after that, which says, Va'al tivi'enu, lo lidei chet, lo lidei avera, ve'avon, v'lo lidei nisayon, v'lo lidei bizayon, v'yishlot banu yetzer hara, etc. It's only a little snippet of that longer paragraph, and it means as follows. We're asking this a little tefillah. We're asking Hashem, don't enable us, don't bring us to the point of doing a sin, whether it's one on purpose or by accident or purpose. And that's it. I don't even want to be tested. Lodi de nisayon. I don't want to even have a nisayon. Don't bring a test on me. And don't put me in a situation of bizayon where I'll be ridiculed. And don't let my yetzer hara rule over me. Again, I come back to the same question we had before. This is up to me. If I want to give in to my yetzer hara, and we all do at one time or another, it's my choice. I made that decision. Why are we asking Hashem? Don't let me get into that. He's the one who gave me the yetzer hara. He's the one who gave you the yetzer hara. So again, it is a situation where we're telling Hashem, we're asking Hashem. For those of you who take Tanya, this will resonate a little bit more because this is what we were just talking about. God, I really want to do this stuff. I don't want to do a Aveirot. I don't want to sin on purpose. I don't even do it by accident. I don't even want to be put in such a situation where I'll be tested. But I can't do this alone. It's impossible. The Gemara tells us, the Talmud tells us in many places, the Midrash tells us in many places, that if it were not for Hashem's helping us, we would never, ever be able to overcome the yetzer hara. So we're asking Hashem, come on, you gave us this yetzer hara. You gave us this desire to do avirot, to do sins. Help us to get through this, because without it, we can't. It's not going to be possible. Okay, let's make this one smaller. I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. I'm going to be doing just something on this paragraph, and I'll explain this for those of you who are not familiar with it. And then if we have the time, which I may, just to get a little bit into Mizmor Shir Chanukah Bayit L'David. But let's talk about this for a minute. In the middle, after the brachot, there are also other things we say. There are people who are accustomed to say the story of the Akedat Yitzchak, the binding of Yitzchak. There are korbanot, various sacrifices that are read about. There's the daily sacrifice. There's all kinds of stuff. I just want to pick out one thing, and that's this part of this paragraph, which leads us into a short version of Shema. We say the following. Now, there's a word in parentheses. I'll come back to that word. A person should always be a God-fearing person. The seter, both in private, v'galui, and in public, umodeh al ha'emet, and always admit the truth, say the truth. The dover emet bilbavo, and also don't fool yourself. Tell yourself the truth. Be honest with yourself. Yashkem, and you should wake up in the morning and say, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Okay, so a couple things. You'll notice I put in parentheses the word kiv'galui, like in public. The Ashkenazim say the way it's written here, uvagalui. The seter uvagalui, private and in public. The Sfaradim say the person should always be God-fearing in private, just like he is in public. What's the difference? So the first way it means that you should not be two-faced. I'm sorry, I said it wrong. It means that both in your private life and in the public life, you have to be God-fearing and act that way. The way the Sfaradim say it is a little bit differently, because it says like this. Perhaps in public, you put on not you, but a person may put on a front that they're God-fearing and they have emunah, but in private, they don't feel it. So we're saying that just like you have this perspective when you're out in the public, just like in the public, you also privately should try to be a person who feels that way, to avoid this big dual double persona, being two-faced in a sense. The question is, why did the Chachamim institute us saying the first paragraph of Shema at this point? I mean, that's not where Shema goes. We know Shema goes later on after Baruch Hu. We're going to, when we learn it down the road, there's brachot that we say before Shema. There's Shema, there's brachot after Shema, just like in Arvid. So there's actually a history to this. History is as follows. In the year 456 of the Common Era, so about 1,500 years ago, I'm going to read the name of the Persian king. His name was Yazdegerd II, not the first, Yazdiger the second. And he made a decree against keeping Shabbat and any public reading of the Torah. And he had spies. By the way, this is nothing new. Again, people think that the Nazis, Yamach Shemam, invented all these new things with the Nuremberg laws and the new things, the way they decided how to execute Jews and to torture Jews. All been there, done that. Jewish history is filled with that. So this is one instance in Jewish history, 1,500 years ago, where the certain things were prohibited by the king, by the Persian king, under whose rule we were at that time. And one of those was any mention of psukim from Torah, which would become a problem because he had spies checking in the shoals, and they evidently were Amidei Chachamim, and I use that term in quotes, because they knew the Jews would have a certain order to their tefillah, right? They knew about the Sidur, the Seder, the order. They knew that Shema would come later in the davening. So what were the Jews having to do? They had to leave it out. Maybe they said it at home, privately. Again, this is why it's the private and public is the introduction to this. But they decided that because these spies were aware of their tefillah, at that point in history, they inserted it very early in the davening, at least to say the first paragraph of Shema, so they would not lose out on it and said the Shema. And therefore, we are saying, just like you are Yirei Shamayim to say that, just like you're hiding it right now, you have to say it quietly in that time period. So too, the Galui, when you're out in the public, live by the words of the Shema. It gives a little bit of different twist on what this paragraph is really about. The way the davening is broken up, if you look in your Siddur, many Siddurim will say at the top of the page what is going on. You have the section of Birchot HaShachar, which means the morning brachot, which we talked about, Birchot HaTorah, the brachot we've gone through already, the Karbanot, that's all Birchot HaShachar. And then we come next to Sukkot Zimra. Literally means the sentences of song. And many people think that Sukkot Zimra starts with Mizmor Shir Chanukat Mizbeach. Okay, it does not. It does not start with Mizmor Shir Chanukat Mizbeach. That is still part of Birchot HaShachar. So what's it doing there? It doesn't really, it's not brachot. What's it there for? If you remember when we started the class tonight, I told you about the concept of Atifat Yishmaeli. What did that mean? Let me take this off a screen share for a minute. We talked, for those who weren't here earlier, Atifat Yishmaeli was the concept that when the person wraps a talit, they had to wrap it up on them so that their face would show. That's how the Yishmaelim would wrap their shawl over their face. And it said that the reason for that was to mention the name Yishmael, because Hashem judged Yishmael, which we've already said twice tonight, Ba'asher Hu Sham, who he was at that moment. Meaning you come in with all kinds of dagot, all kinds of tirdot, all kinds of worries, distractions and all. And you might think you're not the person you should be to daven. It's just, don't worry, Ba'asher Hu Sham, you daven, I'm here for you. But that doesn't always work, because you might have things on your mind. I can tell you, and we could all tell this, it's true about everybody, that our minds wander. We think about things during davening, especially if you go into davening when something happened the night before or that day, and it's on your mind. You're going to have a big thing coming up that day, and you're worried, you're nervous. Things are on your mind. Along comes Mizmor Shir Chanukat Bayit, written by David HaMelech. Look at this. Here's why. It was to give us all a sense and a feeling of it's going to be okay. Put your worries aside. These are some of the psukim. They're multiple. I could pick up 4 more at least. Let's just take a look at some of these. This is David HaMelech. Let's remember. First of all, David HaMelech did not write all of Tehillim. He wrote the majority. Some was Moshe Rabbeinu, some was Adam Rishon, some was by the sons of Korach, some by Asaph. So this one was written by David. And when was this written? It seems to have been written around the time when his own son was chasing him. It's possible when Shaul was chasing him, or it's when his own son was chasing him. It doesn't make a difference. Things were not going well for him. So look at these 3 psukim that come from Mizmor Shir Chanukat Mizbeach. By the way, the custom is also to say this particular paragraph after davening on Hanukkah, the obvious connection being this has to Chanukat Mizbeach, which means the dedication of the Mizbeach, or the altar. Hashem, the first one top. Hashem ha'elita min sha'ol nafshi, chitani miyar livolo. Hashem, free translation, not literal, means that Hashem has taken me, has lifted me out of the depths. The depths being Gehenna, the depths could be depression, the depths could be anything, and He's given me life. But erev yalin bechi, in the evening lie down with sadness or crying. La bokarina, and in the morning there's joy. Again, you have another pasuk, this idea of how bad things are and how terrible things could be, how bad they may seem. David says, it's good. It's going to be fine. This is David HaMelech. I don't think there's anybody listening to me tonight, I hope, that's ever been physically pursued. You may have been pursued in business, maybe in school, maybe by a parent, but to actually be chased and potentially have your life in danger, I'm not talking about, God forbid, you're in a bad neighborhood. I'm talking about on a consistent basis, you're running and running and running, which David was doing more than one time. And yet he was able to say, look, Hashem, I'm grateful to you. Things, they say it's always darkest before the dawn, right? So that's it's over here, this pasuk over here, that what might seem very sad and all, now in the morning there's joy. What would be the joy? You go to sleep at night. You're thinking, I'm afraid I'm going to lose my job. I'm afraid. It's. I don't know if it's going to be there tomorrow for you. I might go in and my boss is going to lay me off. I won't be able to pay my bills. That's a legitimate worry. That's ba'erev yalin bechi. But the morning, now it's time for joy. Why? Because who's the only person or being that can really make the ultimate change of that issue with your job? Hashem. You have to do your part. You have to be a good employee. You can't just slough out and say, God's going to make sure I'm going to keep this job. But once you've done your part, that's the theme. There's all these brachot so far that we've seen. You doing your part, Hashem doing his part. And before we get into Psukei Dezimra, before we get to that, we're given this push, this idea that don't worry, at least for right now during David, focus. Because if David HaMelech could go through those trials and tribulations that he did and come out on the other side with Rina, with joy and Simcha, as you see over here, this way here you have Rina, here you have Simcha, you have other words of joy and happiness in there, we can as well. I'm going to stop here to enable people who need to go to Baruch now. Next week, Bezrat Hashem, hopefully back to regular time. We're going to talk a little bit more about Mizmor Shir Chanukat Habayit, and then we're going to start doing a bit of an introduction to Psukei Dezimra. And we'll find about what seems to be a very, very big contradiction in terms throughout Psukei Dezimra. I'll let you guess.
Thank you, Rabbi. Bye.
You're very welcome. See you all next week. Bezrat Hashem. For those who go to Tanya class, will be Tuesday night at 7 o'clock. Bezrat Hashem. Have a great evening, everybody.